Bonjour tout le monde. Hello and welcome to Stratosphere and our portion of the agenda. My name is Paul Gerard. I'm the CIO at TBS. It really is a pleasure to be here today during these unprecedented times. Times of both hardship and how the COVID crisis is reshaping our personal and professional lives, but also how technology has brought us to a new level in terms of how we collaborate and get our respective jobs done to serve Canadians. Today, you're going to hear about the TBS journey to the cloud. And when I say cloud, I mean infrastructure as a service, IaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, as well as software as a service, SaaS. Nomenclature that I'm sure you've heard many times throughout the years. We're also going to leave plenty of time to address any questions that you may have at the end of the session. Some of the things you probably heard about cloud are that it's very agile, secure, cost-effective, scalable, and reliable. These are all true if you implement the cloud the right way. As an example, the agility of the cloud, the ability to spin up servers in minutes, hours, versus weeks, months, years. Make sure you script everything though. You can do it, but you have to do it effectively and repeatedly. So by scripting it, you can do it in those ways. The security aspects of cloud. They are far and above what you can get in terms of on-premise, but you need to architect the security from the ground up. So as you're going through your cloud journey, make sure that you architect it, that you sanitize it, that you make sure that it is reliable and secure along the way. In terms of cost effectiveness, cloud is quite a different model than on-premise. You're moving to OpEx from CapEx. You're not having to buy servers anymore, but you're having to, I'll call it, lease them. So if you're not going to use them, you have to turn them off, spin them down, etc. Otherwise, your cost structure is going to balloon. So in my estimation, it is more cost effective than on-premise if you do it effectively. Scalability, the hyper scalability of the cloud providers is phenomenal. You can scale up to thousands, even more servers at any given time, and scale them down in, again, as short a time as you spun them up. So the scalability is fantastic. And what we've also noticed is the reliability. Extremely reliable. Servers and services do not go down. Or if they do, they're down for a very brief period of time. And the reliability of the cloud has really proven itself out. All these things are true if you do cloud the right way. So as you go through your cloud journey, make sure that you think about all these things and how you're going to adapt to them, and make sure that the agility, security, cost effectiveness, scalability, and reliability are done the right way. With that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Savak, to introduce himself and go through the formal presentation. So Savak, off to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. My name is Savak Eskibashian. I'm Director of Enterprise Architecture and Cloud Infrastructure at TBS. Okay, I'm going to present specifically around our workload migration project. So our migration out of the Aviation Parkway data center, the modernization of progress, all the applications that we modernized when we moved to the cloud. Speak a little bit about our Office 365 deployment and some recommendations that we have. I'd like to give you a bit of background on the work we've been doing for the last year and a half. As you all know, the Aviation Parkway Data Center, APDC, was due for closure in February 2020. That date shifted a little bit because of COVID, so I think APDC will be closed in November of this year. We went to GCARB and asked for funding to migrate our application portfolio to the cloud, to Azure, because we already had a presence there, so it just made sense. So from December-ish, January to the end of March, we did a complete discovery of our application portfolio. We did all our planning to start migrating and received funding through GCR to do this migration as part of WLM. In December 2019, of course, we got all the connectivity that we needed to start the migration. And in January, so basically from beginning, planning, discovery to end of migration was approximately a year. So in January 2020, TBS was completely 100% in the cloud. Of course, we've been working with a lot of departments for lessons learned, a bit of help in advancing their own cloud migration activities. The modernization timeline, of course, we got told approximately in October that APDC was closing. Like I said, the 3 first months were all around discovery, analyzing our applications, and planning, estimating level of effort. March to January was execution. That's where the whole team, basically we used all of the resources underneath Paul to migrate. So we brought a few consultants along, but we did the migration ourselves, the resources at TBS. And I'll talk about the funding a little bit. That's why it didn't cost us a whole lot of money, because we didn't hire external companies to do the migration for us. January to April, so at the same time as we migrated our apps, we modernized our desktops, we deployed Windows 10 and Office 365 across the department. Of course, with modernizing the tablets, we went latest version of Windows 10. We're using things, cloud tools like Intune to manage the desktops. And of course, now we're into the modernization phase, where this year and next year we are focusing on modernizing what we have migrated. And you know, to speak to what Paul said at the beginning, we're moving from an IaaS, infrastructure as a service, to more of a platform and to a software as a service. So the results of our migration, we started out with 254 applications. We migrated 134 to the cloud, and we actually decommissioned 120 applications. Like they say, technical debt, years of operating. These applications were sitting around not being used. So the budget, we received, you know, a 4.2 million for the project. We spent a little under that. Our operating cost, you know, year over year is around 700,000. We're always optimizing that cost, you know, adopting things like the cloud native apps, and some of the platforms will further reduce the cost. So our successes, we have developed a lot of documentation and automation tools that we share with other departments. Everything is in GC code and GitHub. We have shared this documentations with many departments already, and please feel free to reach out if you don't have access to these documents. We've of course solidified our partnership between SSC, TBS, and industry, and really it was the WLM project was a real partnership between SSC, TBS, and in our case Microsoft, but that could be any industry. We've absolutely increased our skills in the GC in really all aspects of cloud adoption. That goes from networking to servers to security to the connections required. We've built a whole data science community of practice at TBS and a center of excellence using cloud native tools. Of course, when you're in the cloud, you have access to all these software as a service tools. We've adopted a full DevOps model to automate deployment. And, when I say DevOps, that term really, everybody uses it. But when you go, and really a noticeable thing, when you go from deploying a release to production from 3 hours to 15 minutes, that's where you really notice the benefits. We, of course, eliminated our technical debt by decommissioning over 120 applications. These 120 applications were taking up space, taking up space and operations, and you have to patch these servers. You have to do that for applications that were not even being used. And the WLM project was delivered on time, on budget, and with very minimal impact to users. A project of this magnitude, you would see, a lot of outages and stuff. But our users really did not notice we moved. I'm going to hand it back to Paul to talk a little bit about DevOps and Agile.
Yeah, thanks, Beck. So at this, I'm sure you've all heard of these three notions, and some of you have probably implemented them at your respective organizations. Those being Agile, DevOps, and Cloud. So the way our journey started was we actually adapted the Agile project management methodology before we went forward with our cloud adoption and DevOps implementations. And what I found was, with Agile, you have this tight collaboration with your client community and your technologists, your project managers and Scrum Masters and so on. But you're meeting daily. You're trying to deliver product every 2 weeks, so the expectations are high. And if you don't have a DevOps model in place that allows your software team to operate at that same cadence, then you're kind of holding up your Agile teams. And the same thing applies with cloud. Is if you're waiting on infrastructure for months, sometimes longer, that slows down the DevOps team and, again, the Agile project management team. So to me, once we had all three in place, we were able to operate at a whole new level, deliver faster, better, cheaper, keep that cadence with our Agile teams. So it really worked out well. I guess my recommendation to those of you that are going through this journey, I would actually reverse the implementation of these, such that you were doing cloud first, and then you were doing DevOps, and then you were doing Agile finally. The way we did it the opposite of that. My recommendation would be to reverse those. So the next part of the journey that I just wanted to touch on was our implementation of Microsoft 365. Obviously, there's a whole lot of capability underneath that banner. We've implemented a good portion of it. We still have a long way to go. But I'm proud to say that we're the first organization, I believe, or one of the first in the Government of Canada to implement Exchange Online directly in M365 with our partners at SSC. That project went extremely well. All of our mailboxes are now in the cloud. It's really, really reliable. Obviously, more scalable in terms of mailbox size, et cetera. That project in collaboration with SSC has gone extremely well. So we've kind of labeled these me, we, and us in terms of the other aspects of M365 that we're implementing. And we've already completed the second phase, which is me, which included, the reason why we labeled these is it's all about me. So OneDrive, to-do lists, My Analytics, and Whiteboard are really tools for the individual. We being group teams, et cetera. You probably have divisions within your organization or sectors, and that's the we aspect in terms of the use of Teams, Planner, and Stream. And we've completed that as well. And during this COVID crisis, obviously, both of those implementation, as a matter of fact, all three of those, phase 1 through 3, really were important to keep the collaborative aspect alive while people were working at home. And lastly, we're working on the us portion, which is really about external access, SharePoint, Delve, Forms, Yammer, potential Yammer. We're deep into that now in terms of the planning aspect and working closely with our sector partners to define a new information architecture based on SharePoint. So more to come on that, but that is the final phase of what we're doing around the M365 roadmap. Savak, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to hit on a few recommendations that we have. And again, this comes from the year working in the cloud and migrating our applications. Please ensure you have a dedicated cloud team. That is instrumental in your migration. You need the dedicated cloud team, and people seem to think you don't need the same expertise as you would on-prem, but you absolutely do. You need your networking team to zone your infrastructure. You need your firewall team. You need your server guys. You need patching guys. So please have a dedicated team for your cloud adoption. Because cloud is always evolving, ensure that you automate as much as possible your operational activities so you can really focus on, in our case anyways, Microsoft releases new features, almost on a weekly basis. So you need that team to focus on the new technology and not so much on the operational tasks. Because of that evolving technology, you need to ensure that you have a strong communications team that could inform your user base of all these new features that are getting introduced all the time. As I've said before, our goal is to get away from these traditional IaaS, virtual machine for this, virtual machine, to adopting the native tools that cloud brings you and the platforms. And of course, platforms at the very bottom layer are managed by the cloud provider, and all you're doing really is what that means is they take care of the patching and all that on the platforms, and really you're just focusing on the application layer. And as I've mentioned, as Paul has mentioned, security is everything. So make sure that when you're building your applications, and because you have the tools at your disposal, you can automate a lot of these security things where, traditionally we would do these things at the end of a project, but with cloud, you could continuously deploy to an environment and fix security stuff as you move from environment to environment. So those are some recommendations that I have, I guess, for the migration.
Lastly, it's not in the deck, but I just wanted to say that our cloud journey actually started probably about 3 or 4 years ago, whenever we went to implement something called the Government of Canada Financial Management System, which is a large SAP S4 HANA implementation, and it's going to be kind of the platform of the future for SAP clusters across the Government of Canada. So 3 or 4 years ago, we were assessing, how we were going to do this, and obviously we needed a large implementation of the right types of servers to be able to support that environment. And we quickly came to the conclusion that cloud was our only viable option that was readily accessible with the skill sets that we needed and the server horsepower that was necessary for that platform. So we, Sabak and his team actually started down that path quite some time ago, learned the skill sets along the way. And I just wanted to re-emphasize that this is not a light switch. You can't go from having no skill sets in this domain one day to having full set of skill sets the next day. It has to be a transition from where you are today, wherever that might be, to having the skill sets over time, and allow for that time to take place so that organizations like Sabak's can actually develop those skill sets and have them in place whenever you're ready to start your journey to cloud. The second thing that I wanted to just emphasize is the support from your organization. We ensured that we had the support of our deputy right through to, we've got 6 deputy ministers at TBS. So each of those people were on board. The ADM level community was on board. I cannot undervalue that support as you go through your respective journeys. Make sure that you have that. Make sure that you have the stamina to get through this. Sometimes your journey is going to be a little more rocky than others. It's good to have that support from the top as you make that journey. With that, we've completed the formal portion of the presentation. I will hand it back to OCIO to facilitate any questions that you may have, and we can answer those live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.